What are your expectations when it comes to CPI, and do you think that's going to be a big factor in this read?
Well, we do have energy adding to the overall CPI. So we've got an overall gain of 0.3%. And if you strip out energy, which we think will be up about 1.5%, and slightly higher food prices, you get down to that core rate, excluding food and energy. And there we're really kind of on the cusp. We've got a 0.2 increase, so slightly less than the overall. But honestly, it's right on the cusp between a 2 or 0.3. The last 3 months, we've been seeing gains of 0.3. So to finish the year with 0.2 would be a bit of an improvement in the core inflation rate.
All right. I think the key word in what you said was a bit of an improvement. The Fed's been looking for a
Yes.
big improvement for it to get all the way back down to 2%. So I want to ask you, how much is really riding on this CPI report with that Fed meeting coming up in 2 weeks? Does this CPI report, does it influence just this January meeting, or do you think it has an impact on the rest of the year?
Frank, I think it's actually less about January, especially in the wake of that very strong employment report on Friday. I don't think anybody is looking for the Fed to realistically consider cutting interest rates in January. But what it will impact is, as you were saying, these expectations for the Fed over the course of 2025. I mean, right now, the market has really reduced its expectations for further rate cuts. It doesn't even have a full rate cut priced in until October, to give you a sense of how far expectations for rate cuts have been pushed off, given the strength of the data. So the one thing that you could see is if the numbers are strong, like if we get our forecast, I think the markets might settle after a lot of volatility the last, several days in the wake of that employment report, nervousness about the Fed pushing yields higher. But if we get so that might settle with a benign inflation report. On the other hand, a high reading on top of this market jitters, you could get people pricing out Fed cuts for the entire year, on a disappointing,
Really?
higher than expected CPI.
We just had a guest on earlier in the hour. He thought that we might see 3 rate cuts. So you're painting a very different picture, Michelle. We do have to get going. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No,
I want to ask you one last question.
You could. Okay, go ahead.
You go, ladies first.
Well, I was just going to say, we still got 2 rate cuts ourselves, although even that's quite tentative. Honestly, Frank, if you get an unexpectedly high number, you could have people starting to speculate, could the Fed hike rates this year? So that's something to be, that kind of chatter could come in very quickly.